The Greek had the greatest warrior in the world on their side, but the moment their own king disrespected him, he walked off, and without Achilles, an entire army was left wondering, are we actually going to win this war? They don't teach history like this in your school, but between me, you, and these thick men, we are going to change that. Week had passed. The greatest army Greek ever had assembled. Thousands of warriors, hundreds of ships, all stuck at Early's. Some warriors falling sick, some were furious, and morale was crumbling so fast. They then decided to call for Calchas, the prophet, to find out what the gods wanted. Calchas revealed something shocking. Goddess Artemis was furious with King Agi because he killed the dear secret to her, and on top of that, he boasted that he was a greater warrior, greater than Artemis herself. Guys, it's giving he energy gone wrong. How can you say you're greater than a god? Now, in order for goddess Artemis to let the Greek ship show, she demanded a sacrifice, and not just any sacrifice. She wanted King Agi's own daughter, Iphigenia. We're going to call her Ifi for the sake of this story. So when Calchas delivered the news, King Agi was shocked. Like, imagine having to choose between your own daughter and an entire kingdom. And as ambitious as he was, he chose the kingdom. But here is where it gets messy. He didn't tell anyone the truth. Instead, he sent words to his wife at home. Dress Ifi up in her finest outfit and send her over here. She's getting married to Achilles, the greatest warrior in all of Greece. An expensive lie. The girl thought she was going for her wedding. She had no idea she was being sent to her death. And when his wife heard about what happened to her daughter, baby, the woman didn't take it lightly. She wasn't seated around crying. She wasn't begging the gods for answers. No, she was plotting. Now over in Troy, King Priam called an emergency meeting. Everybody important was there. Hector, Paris, the elders, the whole squad. And listen, Hector was basically the only person in this story with common sense. And the oldest elder, Antenor, both turned to Paris. Bro, return this woman. Send Helen back. Do you not see the entire Greek army is literally sailing across the sea because of you? Their point was simple. One woman was not worth an entire kingdom. Well, not to Paris. Because this man looked at all the warning, all the danger, all the common sense in this room, and basically said no. Thousands of warriors are preparing for war, and you're acting like this is a romantic comedy. Please. King Priam could have stopped it. He could have forced Paris to return Helen. He could have stopped the whole thing before it started, but he didn't. At this point, I believe Priam was blinded by his love for Paris, his long-lost son. So instead of saving the kingdom from war, he chose his son, and Troy will end up paying a very heavy price for this decision. At this point, everyone knew war was coming, so Troy started making calls, gathering alliances. The Trojans formed alliance with powerful kingdom, including the fierce Amazon women warriors. Yes, actual female warriors who were absolutely terrifying on the battlefield. They also gained support from the mighty Ethiopian kings and their forces. And so this wasn't just a Greece versus Troy anymore. This was a war that pulls in heroes, kings, warriors, and an entire nation. And trust me, this is just the beginning. After a long journey across the sea, the Greeks finally arrived at Troy. Believe it or not, their first move wasn't war, it was diplomacy. Because as much as they wanted Helen back, fighting a massive war wasn't plan A. The Greeks sent messengers into Troy kingdom with a simple request: give Helen back and no one has to die. Honestly, it was a pretty reasonable offer. Return one person, save thousands of lives. Problem solved. But the Troy kingdom said no. At this point, tension went through the roof. So instead of throwing thousands of soldiers into battle, they came up with another idea. A duel. One fight, winner takes all. King Mani, the husband whose wife has been taken, would fight Paris, the man who took her. Clean, simple, no unnecessary bloodshed, or at least that was what we thought. Now, if you're paying attention to the story, you did probably know who had the better odds. Paris was a handsome, charming shepherd boy. King Mani was a hard-battled king. This was basically a lover boy versus a professional warrior, and the fight went exactly how you did predict it to go. Paris was finished. Downfall. But then, Aphrodite stepped in. Remember her? The goddess who promised Paris the most beautiful woman in the world. Yes, she wasn't about to let her favorites lose. So according to the myth, Aphrodite whisked Paris away from the battlefield and dropped him safely in Troy. Imagine fighting for your life, finally about to win, and your opponent magically disappears. I don't know about you guys, but I did be furious. The Greeks were furious, and at this point, all chances for peace disappeared. The truce collapsed. negotiations were over, and it was time for war. And what followed wasn't a quick war. The Greek and the Trojans would spend the next 10 years locked in brutal stalemate. One side will gain ground, the other will push back. Victories, defeats, counter-attack. Year after year, neither side could land the final blow. The Greeks couldn't take Troy, and the Troy couldn't drive the Greek away. The war had become a deadly game of tug-of-war, and during those 10 years, some of the greatest heroes in Greek mythology would rise, fight, and die, including one warrior whose name would become more famous than the war itself. Achilles. After years and years of fighting, the war had reached a frustrating point. Neither side could win. The Greek couldn't break into Troy, and the Troy couldn't drive the Greek away. So instead of attacking Troy directly all the time, the Greek began raiding small towns and cities that were aligned with Troy. And whenever they captured one of these cities, they took treasures, livestock, weapon, and sometimes prisoners. Those rewards were known as war prizes. During the ancient world, a war prize wasn't just a gift, it was a sign of honor. Think of it like getting a medal for a battle. The bigger the prize, the greater the glory. And this is where our problem begins. During one of these raids, King Achilles received a woman named Chryses as his war prize, while Achilles, the greatest warrior in Greek army, received Briseis as his. At first, everything was fine until Chryses' father showed up. He was a priest of Apollo. He came to the Greek camp bearing gifts, ransom money, and begging King Achilles to return his daughter. And honestly, most people would have accepted the money and moved on, but King Achilles chose violence. King Achilles publicly insulted the priest and sent him away. Chryses was sad and prayed to Apollo, and God Apollo answered her prayers. The god responded by unleashing a plague on the Greek camp. For 9 days straight, men were dying. The army was falling apart. Nobody knew what to do. Eventually, Achilles called for a meeting and demanded answers. The prophet revealed the cause of the plague. Apollo wanted Chryses returned to her father immediately. At this point, the entire Greek army turned to King Achilles. Like, give her back. People are dying. This is not a hill to die. And eventually, King Achilles agreed. But here's the thing. Everybody here saw it as problem solving. King Achilles saw it as humiliation. In his mind, his war prize was taken in front of the entire army. His authority had been challenged. His pride has been wounded. And if there's one thing dangerous men with power hate, it's embarrassment. So King Achilles decided if he had to lose his war prize, then somebody else had to lose theirs too. And unfortunately for everyone involved, that somebody was Achilles. He wanted Briseis, and just like that, everything cracked. To Achilles, this wasn't just about a woman, it was about respect. He was out there bleeding for this war, winning battles after battles, doing the actual fighting. And King Achilles, the so-called leader, was going to humiliate him to his face? Nah, Achilles was done. He didn't draw his sword, he didn't start a fight, he did something worse. He walked away. He took his men, his sheep, his everything, and stepped out of the war completely. No more fighting for King Achilles, no more fighting for the Greek. Let them figure it out themselves without him. And here's the thing, the Greek were good, but Achilles was the difference between winning and losing. So the greatest warrior the world had ever seen folded his arms and sat down. And without him, the Greek would learn the hard way exactly how much blood they could not afford to spill. But that is a story for next time. But before you go, like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss part 3. You don't want to miss how it ends. And quick question, did Achilles have the right to walk away, or was his ego as bad as King Achilles? 2 men letting thousands die over pride. Was he really any better than King Achilles? Drop in the comments. See you all in part 3.